July 23rd, 7 o'clock in the evening. And like I said, within an hour, Star's going to get an MP3 of it, and you can do whatever you want.
Wow, that's going to be sweet.
No more CDs. I wouldn't know how to do it anyway.
We're moving on it. Oh my goodness.
All right. Quiet on the set. Here we go. Sickle cell disease is a group of inherited blood disorders. The red blood cells become hard and sticky and look like a C-shaped farm tool called the sickle. People with the disease can live full lives and enjoy most of the activities that other people do. The Sickle Cell Foundation of Orange County, started in 2006, is committed to increasing the public's awareness of the disease. You're listening to Collage, a public affairs show on KSBR.org, 88.5 HD2, and TuneIn and iTunes apps. I'm Dawn Camber. Our guests are Sickle Cell Foundation founder Star Simmons, her daughter Alyssa, who is the Foundation Teen Spokesperson, and son Charon, who is the Foundation Spokesperson. Star has the sickle cell trait, and Alyssa and Charon both have the disease. Well, Charon, please explain what sickle cell disease is.
Sickle cell disease is an inherited blood disorder where most people's their blood cells are, like donut shaped, whereas with sickle cell and all the different variations of sickle cell disease, some of our blood cells are donut shaped and regular, and they carry like a little air bubble on top of them, but a lot of them are shaped like a crescent moon or like a sickle, hence the name, and it causes fatigue a lot of the time. When those blood cells get clogged up and clotted in our veins, it causes a lot of pain. It can cause stroke if it's in your brain. It causes eye and vision loss, things like that. It's mostly a blood and fatigue related disease.
And when were you diagnosed with it?
I was diagnosed at 5 years old when I had a crisis, and at first they weren't sure what it was. They thought it was osteomyelitis, which is like a bone disease. They couldn't figure out what it was, and I was eventually diagnosed at 5 years old. My sister, on the other hand, because my parents, they didn't know what it was when I was diagnosed, but because they knew what it was before my sister was born, my mother, she diagnosed my sister in vitro, so she was lucky in that aspect because she knew what to expect from it.
So what kinds of symptoms and what have you been going through with this disease?
Well, every patient is different. Personally, my pain, it varies, but it stays around, generally my legs and hips. I have knee pain, I have lower back pain, my hips will hurt sometimes. Oftentimes it leads to shoulder pain, things like that. But yeah, usually it's knee pain and lower back pain.
And Alyssa, what was your experience with the disease?
Well, as my brother said, it varies for every patient. But personally, when I was around 5 years old or as a younger kid, I usually had like leg pain, and I had in my back as well. But as I got older, it progressively started moving, so now I have like chest pains, and that's probably because a lot of times when sickle cell patients are active, sometimes it can cause that your vein moves in certain areas, and when you're stressing your body a lot, it can tend to move. So for me, that's what happened, and I have chest pains a lot more.
Now, Star, you started this foundation because of your son, correct?
Correct.
So explain why you started it.
Well, what happened was when I found out that Charon had sickle cell disease, during that time, that was in the 1989, so you didn't have a lot of help, if you will, for its education and knowledge. And what was so great was that at the time Charon was going to Children's Hospital Orange County, and this amazing nurse came forward and said, hey, we got the support group, but unfortunately it's all the way in Los Angeles. So during that time I had to travel back and forth from Orange County to Los Angeles, and it was very tiring on myself and my husband and my family, especially financially, driving back and forth. So I found a need. So the foundation was birthed out of my own necessity. When I found that there was a need for me to be able to have support then I felt that at that time there was going to be a need for others like me. So that's how it was birthed.
Now, you had the trait. Did you know you had the trait before Charon was diagnosed or afterwards?
Actually, no. To be honest with you, that was my first time hearing of sickle cell disease is when I found out that Charon had the disease himself. And we actually found out when we went on vacation, to be honest with you. He was sick here in Orange County and they misdiagnosed him. And then we went back to Georgia for vacation. He got sick, and that's where we originally got tested. And then we had to bring the paperwork back to California. So I had never heard of sickle cell disease. And at that point, my husband had heard of sickle cell disease because he was in the military, but I hadn't heard of it. It was the first time.
So you just dealt with it. Once your son was diagnosed, you immediately jumped in and got a lot of information, and then you formed this organization.
That's correct. Because I did not have any knowledge about it, I wanted to just dive into it and gain as much knowledge as possible because I knew that this was going to become a lifestyle, if you will. So then I started to learn, and I started to work with hospitals and doctors and educate myself so that I could be able to properly take care of our son, and that's pretty much how it started. And from there, I just dove in completely.
How were you able to take care of Charon and then Alyssa when they were diagnosed?
Charon and Alyssa, it was two different scenarios because with Charon, I had no knowledge. I was totally ignorant of sickle cell. I had to learn about sickle cell. I had to learn about the symptoms as well as the disease itself. So with Charon, I think Charon was my educational foundation part of it, where it was I was being educated through the knowledge of learning sickle cell, but also about individual patients. So then through that, while I was pregnant with Alyssa, I had gained a lot of knowledge about sickle cell and a little bit about patients. And then when she came along, what I did was prior to her coming along, I started to get tested, found out that there was other ways that you can handle preventive measures of taking care of sickle cell patients. And so I kind of took Charon's knowledge along with my knowledge and the help, and we just kind of built something from there.
Now, Charon, can you share with us some of the highs and lows of the disease?
Highs, I mean, I wouldn't say that there are any highs of any disease, but I think there's some takeaways that I've found over the years, because I'm, well, I'll start with the lows, I guess. Because I'm in pain, like on a regular basis, the average person is at a 0 out of 10 pain on a daily basis, whereas myself and other sickle cell patients, and I'm kind of on the low end actually. I spend my day on a baseline of about a 5 out of 10 pain, and it gets anywhere from between a 5 to an 8 on a daily basis, and it can get higher, but usually when it gets higher than that, I'm hospitalized, and I'll spend about a week and a half or so in the hospital, 3 to 4 times a year on the high end, or two times out of a year on the low end. And yeah, I mean, it's just dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of tiredness, and not wanting to do things with friends or family, or not wanting to, not being able to do some things. Like I wasn't able to go snowboarding as much with my friends or family when I was younger because I knew the cold weather would make me sick, or I have to drink a whole bunch of water during the summer because I knew I'd get sick, whereas other people don't have to worry about that. But there are some takeaways from it because of the fact that I learned how to be aware of my pain. I learned how to be aware of my health more. I've been able to help people deal with certain issues, and I've kind of realized that everyone has something. It's just kind of my cross to bear, if you will. But everyone has one, so it's helped me deal with myself and how I deal with other people, and as far as judging other people,
Alyssa?
Yes. I believe, I think that some highs that I've gotten from it is learning how to strive more and dealing with adversities, meaning having sickle cell, a lot of times people may think, oh, you can't do this because you have sickle cell, we don't want you to get sick. But personally, I found that, I've try to strive more to be able to do things, because I know that I have this disability, and I wouldn't want people to see it as me not being able to do other things and, you know, be a normal teenager like other teenagers can do. So I think it's allowed me to really try to strive higher for stuff and try to use my strength use my disability to my advantage to show that I have the same amount of strength as any other person. So I think that's some of the highs. Some of the lows, like you said, it's difficult because sometimes when I am sick, I'm not really able to do as many things as other people can. Like, I won't be able to stay out as long sometimes because I'm in pain, or I may not be able to go to the beach during, you know, the spring because maybe some other people are like, oh, it's hot, let's go to the beach. But personally, since I am anemic, I'm like, well, I'm always cold, so I can't really go to the beach all the time, or I can't always go to the pool because I'm going to end up getting sick. So those are some of the lows that I've gotten from it as well.
So both of you, every day when you wake up, do you think, I have sickle cell disease and I need to think about how I'm going to manage this disease as I get through my day, or is it just you don't even think about it?
I don't think it's a conscious thought, a conscious awareness. I think it's, you know, very, very subconscious, and you just realize that you know, I have to be aware of how this is going to affect me, you know, in the back of your mind, especially when you're having kind of a crisis. Like I said, like we deal with pain on a daily basis. So even though we're in pain, we're not really registering the pain that we have. But when we have kind of an episode, that's when we're more aware of things. And okay, well, I have to let me make sure that I get all my homework done right now, because I know that I'm having a little bit of pain. So let me make sure that in case that I end up hospitalized next week for a week, you know, I won't have to play catch up as much.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's something that I definitely I experience a lot. Like, I don't wake up every morning and I'm like, oh, time to deal with sickle cell again. But, you know, I may go through my day like not wanting to drink water all day, but then subconsciously I'm like, well, I also don't want to end up in the hospital for a week, so I probably should. So those type of things are definitely like always on my mind, but it's not like I go about my day always thinking about the fact that I have sickle cell.
And I think as a parent, there are highs and lows, because for me as a parent, you're always being challenged with their health, meaning that when you're dealing with doctors, there's a stigma there that sickle cell patients have to look a certain way or act a certain way in order for them to be in pain. So as a parent or as an advocate, it can be very frustrating because of the fact that you're fighting for someone who can't fight for themselves, because you are saying that they must look a certain way, i.e., as an adult, Charon, when he is sick, as a parent, my husband are there, the both of us are there with him, and sometimes we're going to ER. I mean, it doesn't happen now because he's been at the same hospital for 25 years, but you go in the ER and they don't want to pay attention to him as much because they feel like, well, they can, you know, their blood pressure is low, they're not really high, he's not crying, but that is an adaptive behavior. They have learned to adapt to that pain, so they're not going to be like your average sickle cell patient coming in and scream and holler, because they're learning how to control themselves, right? Mm-hmm. And on the other side of it, when you're dealing with a high school student like I have, like Alyssa now, because Sharon's 29, Alyssa may miss school a lot, you know, and teacher, you're going in there trying to work with the teachers, and they're like, well, she seems fine to me. She's always coming in every day smiling, happy. Well, doesn't seem like she has a disability to me. And it's frustrating because as a parent, we know what we go through when we leave that school. We know what they go through when they wake up before they come to school. So those are the highs and the lows. And then for me, the biggest high, and I think I will piggyback on what Alyssa said, as a parent and as an advocate, one of the biggest highs for me is, number one, having compassion for people. Because now that I never had compassion, but I have more compassion for people with any type of disability, because I know personally the struggle. I know the struggle that the parents go through. I know the struggle that the patients go through. I know the struggle that the advocates go through. So I sleep, eat, and breathe advocacy, because it is so important to me, because I personally know what I go through, and my kids have been dealing with this since birth, and they've advocated for themselves all their lives. So, but what about those people who can't?
And both of you go around and try to educate people about this. So with Alyssa, can you tell me what are some of the misconceptions people have about sickle cell disease?
Well, I think the biggest misconception that people have is that sickle cell patients are limited, meaning many times people think that having sickle cell means, you aren't able to, like, for example, my brother said go snowboarding. Many people are like, oh, you can't go snowboarding because you have sickle cell, we don't want you to get sick. Or some misconceptions in the hospital as well is, as my mom said, that people, or specifically doctors, sometimes think that we have to look a certain way to be in pain, and that's really hard to deal with being a patient, because I'm going into the hospital and I know my pain is level 10 right now, but people or nurses or doctors may be saying you don't look like, your blood pressure is low, or you don't have a fever, you're not crying, so how can you be in a level 10? But I'm like, but in my body I know the pain that I'm feeling. So I think that's also a misconception, that people believe you have to look a certain way to be in pain, or that you can't do many certain things because of this disability that we have.
Charon?
I would agree with the hospital misconception, and about them being like, okay, well, why are you here? Why do you need so much pain medicine? I've been told many a time. My sister's been told many times. Well, why do you need all this pain medicine? I mean, you're taking enough pain medicine for a horse or whatever, for someone 2-3 times your size. I'm like, yeah, well, we've been dealing with pain and pain medicine all our lives. You build a tolerance to it, so of course you're gonna need more pain medicine, and I'm in more pain than the average person. And just like she said, with people looking at you saying you don't look like you're in pain, my doctor, he's even told us he's had to have conversations with other doctors who worked in his practice before when he's been out, because of the fact that they're like, well, I don't see how he's in so much pain. He doesn't look like he's in so much pain. And there's things called infarcts that I personally have. Some sickle cell patients also have it, where it's basically a decay of tissue, and I've infarcts my bones, around 10 or 11, on my hips and my back, and that's why my hip and back hurts so much, where the tissue and the bone starts to die off, and it doesn't heal. And the doctor, he told one of his coworkers, yeah, he may not be crying and wincing in pain and everything, but let me show you how we know he definitely has this pain. And he showed my x-ray, and you see all these little blank spots on the x-ray, and that's where the bone has died off and where the tissue has started decaying, So that's I think one of the biggest misconceptions is you don't look like you're in pain, so you must not be in pain.
Charon, why do you have to spend a week in the hospital?
Well, when we're in the hospital, we're given oxygen, pain medication, and fluids, and the pain medicine obviously for the pain. The oxygens, like I said, because our cells don't carry as much oxygen, and especially when we're having a pain crisis. When we're having a crisis, more of our cells start to collapse, and they deoxygenate. I'm not going to pronounce it again, so I'm not going to try. Well, we're given oxygen in order to start to build our red blood cells to become whole again. So it just takes a long time to build more oxygen and to take care of the pain and the fluids.
In case you just joined us, you are listening to Collage, a public affairs show on KSBR.org, 88.5 HD2, and TuneIn and iTunes apps. I'm Dawn Camber. Our guests are Sickle Cell Foundation founder Charon Simmons, her daughter Alyssa, and who is the foundation teen spokesperson, and son Charon, who is the foundation spokesperson. Star has the sickle cell trait, and Alyssa and Charon both have the disease. Well, Charon, I know in your background you had an interesting case of practically dying, and your mom brought you to life. Explain.
I mean, let her tell it.
Okay, Star, go for it.
No, I mean, if she says it, she's keeping me alive. But yeah, what happened was, I was actually hoping to go into the Army, and I was working out all the time, and I was training, and I ended up having a severe sickle cell crisis, where my spleen ruptured, which is somewhat common for sickle cell patients, and my body became septic, and the blood just kind of just poisoned and started killing itself. So I ended up, I died, I flatlined twice, once for about 15 minutes, another for about 45 minutes. And
45 minutes, really? It was 13 minutes and then 14 minutes.
That's what I
You said
meant.
45 minutes. Yes. Okay, 'cause we had a press release to prove that.
Yeah, okay. Well, and I had to be, I had renal failure, which was, kidney failure, and I had to do dialysis. I was in a coma for about 2 months, and there was a lot of physical rehab after that, relearning to walk. I had some memory loss at the very beginning. It was a tough road, but yeah, and she did bring me back to life. I wanted to give up. I was in a wheelchair for about 6 months. I was using a walker and a cane for another 3 months or so, and yeah, there was a lot of times, and she was praying, and she just had faith that I was going to come out of the coma alive and not have any adverse effects, and luckily I did.
And I think that comes with, that's something that I speak on all the time when I meet with sickle cell patients, is that you have to have that will and that desire to go. And as our motto is with the foundation, live by design, not by diagnosis, that's exactly what we walk in. It's like, I remember when Charon was in the coma, I was like, Charon, you remember all those things that we tell people? Then you got to get up and you got to move and you got to do it. Charon had the will to live. He had the will to fight. And one thing we were told many years ago, and I think he reached down in a deep place and pulled that. At one time in his life, we had thought about doing a bone marrow transplant, which is the only cure for sickle cell disease at the current time, is a bone marrow transplant. However, doing the bone marrow transplant, there's a lot of pros and cons, and you have to look at the quality of life and not necessarily the quantity of life. And when we really weighed the pros and the cons with Charon, at that particular time, the quality of life was much better than the quantity of life. And so when he went into the coma, that's when he reached down into that place. Now, as Charon mentioned to you, there's different types of sickle cell disease, and he has sickle cell beta thalassemia, which is at the low end, but he experienced the worst that could happen to a person because he had splenic secretion, which is the rupture of the spleen, and so that just killed the whole body. He had over 35 units of blood transferred, and he had full body exchange. But you have to have that will to live, and you have to have that will to fight, and I think that's what a lot of sickle cell patients do have, because every day they wake up, breathe, eat, the fact that they got to fight. You know what I mean? They have to fight to be able to say, you say I can't do this, then I'm going to do it. So they deal with adversity every day. Well, adversity is only going to do one or two things. It's going to break you or make you. And most of the time, because whether they're youth or young adults or adults, that adversity eventually is going to turn into perseverance. And that is what happened. Yes, I give all credit to God. And second, I give it to Charon, not to me. I was just the person there to be able to be that support being for him. But I give it to him because he had to have the will to live and to get up and fight and say, I'm going to go again with it.
Charon, will you share with us what your organization does to help others?
Well, we do a number of things. We deal with patient advocacy. For instance, my mother and I, we will go to high schools, elementary schools, even college students, and if a patient says we need help dealing with a teacher who doesn't give us a 504 plan or IAP plan, which are basically ways to help you deal with your school, as far as some teachers don't allow you to use your notes for a test, but we'll write a plan for them saying that they're allowed to use their notes on a test, because they may not remember something, because we take pain medicine, or we may be fatigued, so we may not forget remember some of the things, and all these things are backed by doctors, and the doctors will say whether or not we need certain things or extra time on a test. We also deal with patient transport. Sometimes there's a lot of kids who can't go very far. Like my mother said, our place is all the way in LA, and that's why we started the foundation. Well, we were lucky enough to be able to drive to LA. Some people may not be able to drive to LA, so we'll help them get to LA, or we will help them purchase clothing or food for their home, or gas for the car if they need it. Whatever they need, we'll help them get it. And then we also provide, we're trying to do scholarships and things like that to help some students who, if they if they're a good student and they have sickle cell or any other blood disorder, or maybe not a blood disorder, they may just be touched by someone who has a disorder in their life, you know, we try to help them help support them in school.
And then other things we do to chime in on that is that we work with other organizations to be able to help disabled students, like Charon said. They don't necessarily have to have sickle cell, but that is our base. Now, what we have taken on this year as a big cause of ours is dealing with patients with hemophilia, because we find that that is a silent killer in high school. People with hemophilia don't have a lot of support in high school for its advocacy, because it's like, you know, if they're bleeding or they're having a problem, it's not something major that you see. You just think it's a nosebleed, but that nosebleed they can die from. So this year we picked up about 6 different patients with hemophilia, as well as what we've done is, like Charon said, when you're dealing with the American Disability Act, we advocate a lot on the educational side, because that is a big problem with patients with sickle cell disease. They tend to fail high school, or they drop out of college and they have all these high loans that they got to pay back because they were sick, and no one told them that there were laws that protect them when they go into college. Like when Charon first went into college, the first 3 months when we got off the plane for him to get in the dorms, he went into the hospital because he went out of state. And so they wanted to remove him and give someone else his bed. And I said, no, the law protects him. That's not, you know. So we do things like that, and as well as Alyssa, I'll let Alyssa speak on what she has done this year for his advocacy through our foundation.
Well, first of all, I usually go into hospitals, and I help advocate other youth. So, meaning I go into hospitals and I may see a teenager that's around the same age as me, and they're struggling with, maybe they're struggling with school. Sometimes they can be struggling with just their self, you know, struggling with their self, meaning they may feel, I don't really want to go to school anymore, or I really don't want to, I feel like I'm losing my friends because I'm always in the hospital. So I try to help speak to them and let them know, you know, there's always someone else there that's dealing with the same thing. Everyone has adversities in life, and just because yours is bigger doesn't necessarily mean that other people are going to attack you for it. There's always going to be judgment, obviously, but I try to comfort them and make them feel as though, you know, there's someone there to help them. I'm also releasing a Sickle Cell app in National Sickle Cell Month, which is September, and I made this app, I want to say 6 months back, maybe. I've been working on it for about 6 months, and I made this app to help sickle cell patients basically track their needs and necessities when dealing with this disability. So some of the attributes that this app has is dealing with water intake, dealing with medicine intake, or scheduling times that they need to take their medication, because I know sometimes as a patient we can be taking so many different medications and it's hard to keep up sometimes, like, oh, I need to take this one at 5 o'clock, this one at 7. So it's hard to always know when you need to take your medication and why. So this app also has that, so you're able to track when you're taking it. Also, it has appointments, so you can know when your next doctor appointment is. So, and then you can also put like statistics into that app, so then when you go back to the doctor and they're like, okay, how have you been feeling, what have you been doing to try to prevent your crisis, they can go back in this app and say, well, this day I took this much medication, and probably because I only drank this much water. So things of that sort, which will help allow them to keep up with their disability more, because I know as a patient it's kind of difficult. You're not always thinking about having that disability, and you don't really want to always keep it on your mind. So having this app hopefully makes it more helpful for the patient, and being that it's technology, and since that's so big nowadays, you know, a patient may not look at this as, oh, it's just another doctor app. It's like, okay, it's something.
Gamification.
Yes, it's gamification, meaning it's more appealing to your eye, so you're not like, it's not just some regular calendar app that you have to put notes in. It's an app that's more useful and more helpful and more enjoyable.
You have been listening to Collage, a public affairs show on KSBR.org, 88.5 HD2, and TuneIn and iTunes apps. I'm Dawn Camber. Our guests have been Sickle Cell Foundation founder Star Simmons, her daughter Alyssa, who is the foundation teen spokesperson, and son Charon, who is the foundation spokesperson. Star has the sickle cell trait, and Alyssa and Charon both have the disease. Please join us next time on KSBR. All clear. All clear.
That was good.
Much faster than it usually does.